Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The last speaker said there's no guarantee of victory for the one that lives, as the dead one might just get 7 virgins. That's what we on Proposition call a win-win situation. Okay, so basically we believe that you should have pluralism, and you should extend that pluralism to the morally abhorrent. And that's what I'm going to be looking at in this summary. I'm going to be looking at what we should let people do. I'm going to be looking at Sam's discourse on analysis on drilling, and maybe I'm going to be looking at fairness too. Okay, so what should we let people do? Well, we say, really, it's quite simple. Jimmy, like the first opposition team, don't really seem to understand it. They said, you know, if I hurt Jimmy and he doesn't consent, what's the problem? We say the problem's quite simple. He didn't consent, right? So we say, if he does consent, then we're good with that. We say the opposition clearly don't understand the way in which individuals value different things. Consistently, we've said the state can't know the values that individuals place on things. We say this varies from individual. That's what makes individual existence so important, because it's so unique, because it's so subjective, as Sam said. They clearly know nothing about the price of, and the value of fish, ladies and gentlemen. We say if somebody is willing to contract to dying over a fish, then they should have that right, because we think that to some people, fish might just be very important. So we say engagement with someone else is perfectly just, because you're facilitating someone else to achieve an act which you both think is good. We think that's a nice thing. Okay, we say that this sort of, already we allow it, we say we allow it in an indirect sense when people go climbing and stuff. They didn't really give us a response to that. We say that people can contract into this all the time. We say people may feel like they can't be, we feel people may feel like they sort of are indestructible. If they do feel this, then this model will certainly get rid of that arrogance, and that's fine. No, thank you. Okay, so Sam told you one of the reasons why this is so important is because death is very subjective. Right. We say that unless the state knows what happens, you can't compare. We say this is perfectly consistent with what the first proposition told us about them not having any regrets, because we say we don't know about the regrets if they do happen. We say it's not our responsibility for people having regrets in the other world. We don't mind about that. Okay.
Okay, question. Wonderful. Okay, if hatred is a state in which it's impossible for you to live in one existence with someone else, what if you go to an afterlife and you're existing for the rest of eternity with that individual?
Okay, well, we say 2 things. Firstly, if you're any good at drilling, then at least for a wee while, you're going to have this world to yourself without them. Okay. So, discourse analysis on drilling. Right, okay, so basically we think the mechanism of revenge will always be desired. Like the opposition said, there are lots of violent people who like to kill people. We think if there really is this culture of violence, then we might as well normalise it, and we might as well embrace it and make it regulated. We say people will opt into the system because it gives them a fairer chance, and it'll entrench the values of rules and stuff like that. We say they'll opt into it because they won't want to go to jail, and we'll say they'll opt into it because if they don't opt into it and instead just go for arbitrary murdering, then they'll be looked on as pathetic and not tough and not powerful. We think people will care about their image, and therefore they'll want to do it in this regulated way. So that'll be good. Okay, we also think it's going to be really good because the type of people who opt into the system are going to be the type of people that the opposition are so concerned about, the type of people that are violent, the type of people that are murderers. If they opt into the system enough, eventually there's not going to be very many of them left. That's going to be just a gene pill, and that's going to be just grand. Okay, so we say this is going to be brilliant because we're going to have consent. We say if you're explicitly contracting into death, then you know what you're doing is better than sort of the random act of violence they're talking about. All right then.
Madam, as we've asked you from the word go and no one on your side of the table has answered, can you at any stage during the duel withdraw consent?
No.
That's a problem.
That's just ridiculous. If you decide you're going to climb a dangerous mountain, as you're falling through the air, you can't change your mind. You should think about it before you start. That's also ridiculous, because we say in that situation the person's going to have to live with the consequences, and that would be something quite horrible. We say in this situation it's actually totally different. They gave you a wonderful situation with the paper contract. We're good with that. No. Okay, we say the outcomes of this are also going to be good, because presumably when you enter into it, you want the other person not to exist anymore. We say the best option is they die, the second best option is you die. Either way, you don't have to put up with the person anymore. You've achieved your game. No, thank you. Okay. So then we say, like, the external consequences. And we say, well, drilling, like, at the moment doesn't happen in a formal way. It can be quite messy. You can get collateral damage. When these guys go into their wee room that first proposition told you about, there's going to be no one else in there, so that's going to reduce collateral damage. So we think that's a really good thing. No, thank you. We also think that you're going to be less likely to get resentment and to get the blood feuds, because it's not going to be acceptable for them to say they didn't know what they were doing and they were truly murdered, because everyone else can say they did know what they're doing, they signed the piece of paper. So we actually think if the opposition are so concerned with this culture of violence, we're actually going to reduce this. We're going to reduce it because we're going to make the perception that what you're entering into is fair, that you're now within a transaction. We say, therefore, we're not going to be hurting innocent people. We say that this is much better. We want to prevent killing against people's will. We say that's the supreme bad, because this is most important thing is individual rights and people deciding what's good for themselves. At the moment, that people who might enter into a contractual duel instead go out and arbitrary murder, and we say that's worse. We say that drilling is unregulated and everyone faces the same punishment. We think that's simply not fair. If you've agreed with the person you're about to kill that they're good with that, then we don't think you should be faced with the same consequences as somebody who hasn't consented, because we say you've done something quite different there, and we don't think that's very nice or very fair. Okay, so we say the state only has a monopoly on violence because it removes the ability of individuals to protect themselves and to stand up for their own rights. We say when the state enfranchises individuals to make their own choices, they therefore no longer need to be protected. They contract out of that. We think that's the best way. Okay, so therefore, because we think that people know what they're entering into, because we value fish, and because we don't value life over individual rights, I beg to propose.